Mississippi has one of the least regulated late fee frameworks in the country, consistent with the state's overall minimalist approach to landlord-tenant regulation. Mississippi has not adopted a comprehensive Landlord-Tenant Act, and the landlord-tenant relationship is governed primarily by common law principles, limited statutory provisions, and the lease agreement. If you're a landlord or tenant in Mississippi, the lease is your primary governing document for virtually everything, including late fees. Let's start with the basics. Mississippi does not have a specific statute that caps late fees. There is no percentage limit, no dollar cap, and no statutory formula. The fee amount is governed entirely by the lease terms and general contract principles. Mississippi also does not mandate a grace period. There is no state law requiring any specific number of days before a late fee can be charged. If your lease says rent is due on the 1st and a late fee applies on the 2nd, that's enforceable. However, most Mississippi landlords include a grace period of 3 to 5 days as standard practice. The key legal principle is reasonableness under Mississippi contract law. A late fee is a liquidated damages provision, and Mississippi courts apply the standard two-part test. First, the damages from late payment must be difficult to calculate precisely at the time the lease is signed. Second, the fee must be a reasonable pre-estimate of those anticipated damages. A fee that fails either test, particularly one that is grossly disproportionate to the landlord's actual costs, is an unenforceable penalty. What's reasonable in Mississippi? The state has one of the most affordable rental markets in the country, with some of the lowest median rents of any state. Rents in Jackson typically range from $700 to $1,200. In smaller communities, rents of $400 to $700 are common. A flat fee of $25 to $50 or a percentage-based fee of 5 to 10% of the monthly rent is generally defensible. Given the lower rent levels, the dollar amounts are modest. A $50 fee on an $800 Jackson rent is about 6% reasonable. A $100 fee on a $500 rent in a smaller community is 20%, vulnerable to challenge. The lease must clearly state the late fee terms. Given Mississippi's extremely limited statutory framework, the lease is essentially the only document that governs the late fee relationship. The lease should specify the rent due date, any grace period, the exact fee amount or formula, when the fee triggers, whether additional charges apply for continued non-payment, and whether the fee is defined as additional rent. Without clear lease language, the fee is virtually unenforceable. Mississippi's Consumer Protection Act, found in Mississippi Code, Section 75-24-1 and following, prohibits unfair or deceptive trade practices. While the Act primarily targets commercial sales, it can potentially apply to residential rental practices in certain circumstances. Systematic overcharging of late fees, particularly combined with failure to disclose the fee terms, could be challenged under this framework. Compounding late fees in Mississippi are governed by the lease and the reasonableness standard. A single one-time fee is the simplest and safest approach. Daily or weekly compounding must produce a total that's reasonable. Given Mississippi's low rent levels, even a modest daily fee can accumulate to a disproportionate percentage within a few weeks. Most Mississippi landlords use a single flat fee. The interaction between late fees and the eviction process in Mississippi is fast. Mississippi allows just 3 days' notice for non-payment before the landlord can file for eviction. This is one of the shortest notice periods in the country. The fast timeline means late fee disputes and eviction proceedings can overlap almost immediately. Whether unpaid late fees can be included in the 3-day notice depends on the lease. If defined as additional rent, they're includable. If not, the landlord may need to pursue them separately. Best practice: define late fees as additional rent. Mississippi's eviction process through the Justice Court is relatively quick. The combination of the 3-day notice and efficient court proceedings means the entire process can be completed in a matter of weeks. The amount demanded must be accurate at every stage, including only compliant late fees. Mississippi does not have a specific statutory framework for security deposit limits or return deadlines comparable to most states. The security deposit is governed primarily by the lease terms and common law. When a tenant vacates with unpaid late fees, The landlord can deduct them from the deposit if the lease authorizes it and the fees are reasonable. Without a statutory deadline, the landlord should return the deposit within a reasonable time, which Mississippi courts have generally interpreted as 30 to 45 days. For tenants receiving housing choice voucher assistance, Mississippi landlords should not charge late fees when the housing authority's portion is delayed due to processing. The tenant cannot control the authority's payment timeline. If the tenant's portion is paid on time, the fee should apply only when the tenant's own payment is actually late. Mississippi's military population is centered around several installations. Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi is one of the Air Force's primary electronics and cyber training centers with constant trainee rotation. Columbus Air Force Base near Columbus is a pilot training base. Camp Shelby near Hattiesburg is one of the largest National Guard training sites in the country. The Naval Construction Battalion Center in Gulfport generates Navy demand on the Gulf Coast. Military pay is predictable, and most military tenants pay reliably. Keesler's training mission produces constant rotation. New military tenants arrive regularly and may need a pay cycle to set up direct deposit. Some Biloxi area landlords accommodate this by being flexible on first-month timing while setting clear expectations going forward. Mississippi's economic conditions create practical considerations for late fee enforcement. The state has the lowest median household income in the country, and many tenants live on fixed or limited incomes. Social Security, disability payments, veterans' benefits, and other government payments arrive on specific schedules that may not align with the first of the month. Some Mississippi landlords, particularly those serving lower-income tenants, adjust rent due dates to accommodate common payment schedules. The practical reality in much of Mississippi is that aggressive late fee enforcement against tenants who are genuinely unable to pay produces little revenue and accelerates vacancy. In communities with soft rental markets and limited tenant pools, losing a tenant over a late fee dispute costs far more than the fee is worth. This doesn't mean landlords should waive late fees entirely, but it means the fee structure should be realistic given the local economic conditions. Mississippi's Gulf Coast, Biloxi, Gulfport, Ocean Springs, Pass Christian, faces hurricane risk that periodically disrupts the rental market. Major storms can affect tenants' ability to pay on time through displacement, property damage, job disruption, and infrastructure failures. Landlords on the Gulf Coast should have a disaster contingency plan that includes flexibility on late fees during declared disaster periods. The casino industry along the Gulf Coast and in Tunica County employs a significant workforce with income that can fluctuate based on tips and business volume. Late payment patterns among casino workers may correlate with slow periods in the gaming calendar. From a practical standpoint, Mississippi's rental market is one of the smallest and most affordable in the country. Jackson is the state's largest city and primary rental market. The economy is driven by state government, healthcare, including the University of Mississippi Medical Center, education, and manufacturing. Rents in Jackson are affordable, typically $700 to $1,200. Most Jackson landlords charge flat fees of $25 to $50 with a 3 to 5 day grace period. Jackson has experienced population decline and economic challenges that have softened the rental market in some neighborhoods. Landlords in weaker Jackson neighborhoods should be conservative about late fee amounts. The focus should be on maintaining occupancy. The Gulf Coast, Biloxi, Gulfport, Ocean Springs, has a more dynamic market driven by the military, casinos, tourism, and healthcare. Keesler AFB provides a stable military tenant base. Casino and tourism workers create more variable payment patterns. Hattiesburg, home to the University of Southern Mississippi, has a moderate market with student influence. Oxford, home to the University of Mississippi, has a tight student market where financial aid timing affects payment patterns. Tupelo, Meridian, Vicksburg, Greenville, and smaller Mississippi communities have very affordable markets with limited demand. Late fee amounts should reflect these economic conditions. The Mississippi Delta, one of the most economically distressed regions in the country, has the softest rental markets in the state. Population decline, limited economic opportunity, and very low incomes characterize the Delta. Landlords in the Delta should set late fees that are realistic for the community. A fee that could be appropriate in suburban Jackson may be uncollectible in Greenville or Clarksdale. One best practice for Mississippi landlords: because the state has virtually no statutory framework for late fees, your lease must be your complete governing document. Include a detailed provision covering every element: due date, grace period, fee amount, trigger date, compounding rules if any, definition as additional rent, and how the fee interacts with the security deposit. Without this level of detail, disputes are resolved by a judge interpreting an ambiguous lease, which rarely favors the landlord. Another best practice: calibrate your fee to the local market and the local economy. Mississippi's extreme variation, from the Gulf Coast's moderate economy to the Delta's deep poverty, means a fee that's reasonable in one market is unreasonable in another. A percentage-based fee automatically scales to the rent level. A flat fee should be adjusted by market. A third best practice: in markets where many tenants receive government payments on specific dates, consider offering flexibility on the rent due date. If the majority of your tenants receive Social Security on the 3rd of the month, setting the due date on the 5th eliminates most late payments entirely and saves you the administrative cost of tracking and enforcing late fees. The goal is on-time payment, not fee revenue. For the complete guide to Mississippi late fee laws, visit tenantscreeningbackgroundcheck.com. Subscribe to our channel for every state in our late fee law series.